Good day, Android Studio coders. Welcome again to this Android Studio channel. This is Lansky, and this is part 2 of button clicks in Android Studio. So, if you haven't watched the part 1 of this video, which is button clicks about the basics in Android Studio, I suggest you watch that first because in this video, we are gonna be dealing with a little bit advanced concepts in button clicks. So, in the first part, we only have one or two buttons, and uh, it was about assigning a code that would fire inside the onCreate whenever you click a certain button, one or two buttons. And uh, the second method in that video is that you, instead of inside the onCreate, you assign the code that would fire inside the procedure or function outside of the onCreate in your launcher activity, and the name of that function would be assigned to the XML on click tag of the XML of your button in your layout, and that would fire since it is recognized as the procedure that would be linked to that button when it is clicked. So in this video, we are going to have 8 buttons, and in this topic, we are going to present a way of doing each step in the part 1 of this part 1 video that would seem tedious if done on a lot of buttons like this. You have 8 buttons, and it is very repetitive for you to create a function for that button, wherein you first you have to uh, assign a button object, and then you assign inside the onCreate, you instantiate that button object, and then you assign that to the ID of that button. So those are the steps inside that you would see inside part 1. And if you have so many buttons, it's very tedious for you to do it. For example, here, to do the 3 steps inside in part 1 of the video on button clicks, for you to do it on 8 buttons. So in this video, we're gonna be dealing with concepts that would allow you to automate that process. So let's head back to our main activity.java. So here, in order for us to automate that process, we are gonna be using arrays. So first, let's create an array that would store the IDs of the buttons. Even if you have so many buttons, for example 100 button, you have to put those IDs inside the array. So first, let's create that array. So let's use private, and let's make it static and final, and then it's an int type array. So since we are going to be storing IDs, let's call this ID array. And since it's an array, let's put this symbol here, and then let's assign the contents of the array here. And since we have 8 buttons, let's just type it like this: button 1 dot id dot button 2, button 3, and button 4, and just go on until you finish up to button 8. Okay, so we now have our array that contains the IDs of the button. So this is the first step. Step 1, create an int array that would contain the button IDs. Okay. And step 2, let's create a button object. So let's use private again. And since it's a button object, let's call the button uh, class here. And since it's an array, it's a button class array, and let's name it just as button, or yeah, button. And then let's instantiate it with new button. And how do we know, since it would not have any value inside it yet, how do we know the length of the array? Since here in this one, the array already knows its length because you have assigned values, or which are the IDs of the buttons inside it. So the length is 8, and you need a button object that would store 8 here, the length that is 8. So you let it know that it needs to have a length of 8 by passing here the length of our ID array. So ID array dot length. So that's it. So this is step 2 here. Step 2, create a button object, button array object, and instantiate it with the length of ID array. Okay, so we now have 2 steps. Let's now head inside the on create, and that actually step 3 is assigning the button array object named button, which is this one, to the button IDs. And how are we gonna do that? And we can do that with the use of a for loop. So this the secret here is creating arrays and using for loops to uh, what you call this, to be able to take advantage of the characteristic of an array. So we create here a for loop, and since our button name starts with 1, let's instantiate an int I here, which is to be instantiated to 1. And then let's just put int I here, so it's not it looks bad to declare it inside the for loop. And then the I, which is the name of our int, as long as it's less than the length of the ID array, then it's gonna be incremented, and the code inside this for loop would fire. So that's it. You have instantiated that to I. Okay, since it's a I++, before incrementing, this would image the code inside the for loop would fire first. So how do we do that? We call now our button array object, which is named as button, and we pass the value of the int, which is the I. So in the first run, it's button 1. So the ID that would be called would be button 1, because this should be instantiated as 0, because uh, this button 1 here is actually of the index 0. So this should start as 0. The int I should start as 0. And then as long as the I is less than this one, it would fire. But if it's equivalent to the length, it wouldn't fire anymore. So let's do it. Let's test it. the same the method is actually the same when you do without the array, but it's a little bit different because you pass the value of the int I. So you have here button, and then you use the same thing, find u by id, and then instead of passing the actual name of the actual id of the button, of course you use the array. So id array, and you have 1 here. Okay, since this one would on the first run this would be 0, and it's not 1, it should be I. So on the first one I would be 0, so this is button 1 here, and then this one, the one that would be assigned is r.id.button 1. So okay, uh let's check. I think we have a problem here because we started the name of the array as 1. So in order to fix that, uh, we could go to our XML and change the button names to start as 0. But since we already have named that as 1, let's just do uh, a separate loop here, I think, because this should be 1 here. So let's just do it like this. Let's create another int inside this. Int, let's just name this as int y, and then this y would become, this should be instantiated as I plus 1. So yeah, that would do it. Let's put that as a y. So we have already fixed that, and it would automate, but we don't need actually this one and this I. This should this y, this should just be I if we have started our IDs as button 0, because it would just be the same. So we could try that after this. I'm gonna show you that it's just the same. So since we have already done this, we can test if it works by assigning a value. As you can see here, our values are 1 to 8, but we could manipulate that by using this. So button y that set text equals test, or it works. Okay, so let's test our code here. So as you can see, we did not there is no need for us to uh, assign the IDs one by one. We just used a loop. Okay, sorry, something has gone wrong. Set text did not fire. Okay, let's fix this. Let's see what is the error message. Okay, let's try to do it again. Okay, let's test renaming this buttons here. So let's check. Let's just remove this one. I think it doesn't matter if we use the I, because this is just the name of the button object, so it doesn't matter. Okay, so we are coding here live. Okay, we have our buttons and there's no error there. So what just happened is that this button object is named as button 0 on the first run of the loop, and it's assigned to button 1. So my fear of not working because of that is not really well founded, because this is just a name of an object or a variable, uh, and it's assigned to the first one, which is this button 1. So let's do this. So button I that set text, it works. So let's see if this fires. Okay, so it works. So see that, guys, we can automate everything. Even how many buttons you have, you have 20 buttons, 25 buttons, you can do it with just a very simple fewer lines of code. Just use an array in a for loop. So the next thing that should be done now is, what if I want my I really want my button to be named 1 to 8. So we can a little fix that a little bit. We can try doing that as uh, I. So let's see if that works, or we need to convert it that to set text. Okay, so it does not work, so we need to create a string here, string button text. Okay, so what would happen is to convert, and we have int button value. Okay, so let's assign the button value to the value of I plus 1. Okay, let's not increment because the value of the I would change. And then button value, button text equals, no, let's go to it directly. Button value that to string, oh, it's not working like that. So string to it's not working like that. So wait, let's what you call this, analyze. I think it's integer that to string. And what are we converting to string? The button value. Okay, uh, okay, so the button value should be plus 1, because we want our first button to be 1 instead of 0. And then we assign the button text here, and I think it should be working now. Let's save our work and fire the code. So you see, uh, even if you have not yet put the text or label of your button, you can put it there through code, and it would be automated like that. So That's only the first part. So some of you may be asking, what if I want to put an on-click listener to each code? So actually, I haven't done that before, but I think we can also automate that. So example here, let's remove this, everything that we have here. It's just for demo purposes in our code, but the real thing is just here, how to pass it to find view by ID. So now what we do is, since we have our button, we now set that to our on-click listener. Okay, that set on-click listener, new on-click listener. So we now have here, we now have a click listener to each part of our buttons here. So just to test if it works on all of our buttons, toast make text and get application context to be safe, and click works. So toast, sorry, toast short that show. So let's fire this. This should work on all the buttons. This one. So let's see. Okay, click works. Click works. Let's test on every button. Click works. Okay. Okay, it works. It fired. So let's congratulate ourselves. But you see, some of you may still be asking, I'm just passing a single type of code to all the click listener of the button. So how do I differentiate each button if I want to pass different types of code to each button? So that's the function of our, let's just comment this out. That's the function of our view here, or we can change this to B just to save on typing effort. So we can put a switch statement here, switch v that get id. I think that's it. Okay, and then we put a case here, case r dot id dot, no, not like one, case dot id array dot I. So I think it should be button. No, it wants us to put the actual name of the ID. Okay, but we should be automating this one too. Let's see, let's try again. So it's not working like that. Let's try using the actual ID. Okay, so it works like that. So when we do the actual code, although the only thing that we can automate here is the assignment of the find view by ID, the assignment of the button object to the actual ID, and the setting of on-click listener. But in case of the switch, we have to specify the actual button ID. So it's okay, since even if we do the button I array thing, you still have to type each one. So here we can only automate if you only have one code to fire for each button. But if you have different code to fire for each button, you have to put the different switch cases here. So let's try. Let's use toast for simplicity and get application context. Usually when you're in deep in your code, instead of this, you use get context or get application context. Let's try get context here. Get context. So get context is not there. So let's use get application context. So let's just put there one, and then toast that short that sorry that show. Okay, so let's try this on all 8 buttons. So let's make this button 2, and then we have here 2, 3, 3, 4, 4. Bear with me, guys. We have 8 buttons here. Okay, we now have 7, 7, 8, and then 8. So what should happen here is that it should be able to execute the code assigned to each button ID. So let's save our work, and then let's fire it. Okay, okay, you have 1. Oh, it does not work. It fired everything because you see the error here. Why did it fire everything? This code is correct, but we did not put, since this is a switch statement, after each case we put a break so that it doesn't continue uh, with the next line of code. So what is missing is the break statement. Let's just add a break statement for each case. Okay. So whenever we have an error, guys, we learn how to debug our code. So it's an important programmer characteristic or skill to be able to see what's wrong with your code. So you see how to what to do when you see that type of it's not a code error, but it's a logic error. Okay, it should only fire the one and not the subsequent code. So we got it, guys. The break statement fixed it for us. Okay, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so what would come next? Actually, it's uh, we can just remove the on-click listener. We retain this, but of course, if we put the procedure outside, uh, we don't need to do this thing anymore here, because we are gonna assign that to the XML of the on-click tag of each button XML. But for our purposes now, we are not yet gonna explore that. I'm gonna try to explore that, research that first, and would explore that and show that to you and in part 3 of this video. So thanks for listening again, guys, to this video. Hope you have fun, and hope you can use this what you have learned here in your own project. So thank you very much for supporting me and watching this video. Bye bye.